Hello and welcome to the Education Redefined webcast series, where I uncover educational best practices and share success stories with every single episode. Go ahead, grab a cup of coffee or your favorite drink and enjoy a few moments talking about teaching and learning with me. Hi, my name is Sandy Alakhanpal and I am your host for this series. Subscribe to our webcast or look out for new episodes on YouTube. Join our Facebook group for the latest trends in the field of education. This episode of Empowering Students with Dyslexia kicks off the beginning of a series of podcasts to celebrate October as the Dyslexia Awareness Month. In this episode, the spotlight is on Jasmin Dean, the Executive Director of Celebrate Dyslexia. Celebrate Dyslexia focuses on connecting with parents of dyslexic children and provides evidence-based information that helps navigate the current education system to ensure children's individual success. Their mission is to foster a community that celebrates, educates, and empowers those with dyslexia. Jasmin Dean is the co-founder and executive director of Celebrate Dyslexia, a nonprofit organization fostering a community to celebrate, educate, and empower the 1 in 5 with dyslexia, creating a portfolio of high-profile, strength-based events assisting the education community in efforts to bring evidence-based practices to every classroom and including efforts on medical accountability in this all important conversation with parents and children alike. Her efforts are to close the action gap for all those with dyslexia and the power that love, educate, and employ them. Celebrate Dyslexia presents whiteboard exhibits Beautiful Minds, Dyslexia and the Creative Advantage, currently showcased at the Houston's Health Museum. This exhibition explores the successes of those who think and thought outside the box when faced with the challenges of dyslexia and learn about some of the tools and resources for diagnosis and pathways to success. A unique portion of the exhibit also reflects each community that it travels to by featuring local students and artists. In this episode, Jasmin talks about the key initiatives behind Celebrate Dyslexia, ways to get involved with Celebrate Dyslexia, and most of all, gives a glimpse of the Beautiful Minds exhibit, which is currently showcased in the Houston's Health Museum. In the show notes, you will find links to learn more about the Beautiful Minds exhibit and the calendar of events at the Health Museum. Be sure to register for Dyslexia 101 and Dyslexia 201. These are free virtual seminars offered in partnership with the Nyehouse Education Center. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jasmin Dean. Hi, Jasmin. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Education Redefined. I'm so excited to talk about Celebrate Dyslexia today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. So I'm going to dive in right into what inspired you to start Celebrate Dyslexia.
Well, really, it was a desire to meet other families and not talk about standardized testing. It was a desire to get together and talk about all the strengths that our kids have and really enjoy our children instead of talk about the burdens that we carry with the current education system. So I was challenged to find a space of celebration of dyslexia where we could gather and talk about strengths. And that's when I came across Beautiful Minds, Dyslexia and the Creative Advantage in Oklahoma City at the Science Center.
Yes, and I do want to talk about that as well. But before we get into the Beautiful Minds and the whole exhibit that we have in Houston right now, let's talk about Celebrate Dyslexia for a second. Like, what
Sure.
is it? It's what's the mission behind it, and what are some of the resources available through Celebrate
Sure.
Dyslexia?
Well, Celebrate Dyslexia is a 501c3 based out of San Antonio, Texas. And our mission is to celebrate, educate, and empower the 1 in 5 with dyslexia. And I'll add to that, and support all those who love them. So
I'm
we
sure
have,
there's a lot. There's a
yes,
lot.
yes.
Yes.
So we have 3 initiatives. The first one is the Celebratory Initiative, where it is continuing to produce high profile events such as this exhibit and partner with other organizations that have this type of material so that we can provide spaces of community awareness and commentary, a place where people can gather and learn, find community, find encouragement, find hope, find joy, find answers. So that is our first initiative. The second initiative will be our medical initiative, where we are working on impacting the medical community in this conversation and having them partner really in earliest possible identifications, conversations during well-child visits, more accessible screeners that each doctor knows about and can use, and hopefully be reimbursable by insurance companies. Right. The third initiative is our education initiative, which we know is really at the heart of this whole conversation, and meeting the needs of every stakeholder in this education conversation, from school board member to central office, campus admin, general ed teachers, specialists, support staff, parents, and students themselves. Every single one has a different take, a different position in the conversation. And our approach is that if they come to us asking for help, we are the no judgment zone. We are aware that everybody has great strides to make in this conversation. And so in order to walk forward with each individual, we have to be that place where they can open up, be vulnerable, and let us know what they want to know and what they be, for them to feel safe, for us to tell them what they need to know and how to carry on this conversation and this movement forward in their respective roles.
Awesome. Awesome. Can I dive a little bit deeper into that medical community section, right?
Sure.
Because I think that's a big area of need. Because from what I have, for the little research that I have done, there's a lot of, I want to say, lack of information in the medical community, especially at the pediatric level, right? A lot of us depend on our pediatricians to be that first level of defense or the first level of questions. Like when I think of digging a little bit deeper in terms of academics or something that's going on cognitively with my child, the first person or the first expert is the pediatrician, right? But from what I've heard, there's a lot of pediatricians who don't know enough about dyslexia and hence don't know what the next step is or how to guide the parents, right? So this medical community initiative that you have as part of Celebrate Dyslexia, how can the medical community, specifically pediatricians, learn more from that initiative? And then how can parents kind of push for more education for pediatricians? Because from what I understand, they get one class in dyslexia or learning disabilities in their entire medical education.
Right.
So
So,
what is Celebrate Dyslexia doing, and how can they help with that?
so if we can just pause.
Yes,
And
that's a lot of questions. Sorry.
we can see that parallel relationship to teachers.
Okay.
So often we hear from teachers, we didn't learn this in college.
Right.
So if we jump over to the medical field, we can hear the same thing, right? And there has been progress. I believe they do talk about it more than they used to, but it is still definitely not enough. And the specific specialty that diagnoses this is a developmental pediatrician. And most often, at least in our community, there aren't enough. So if my pediatrician were to refer me to a developmental pediatrician, I'd have to get in line with all kinds of other issues, and I wouldn't necessarily have my questions answered in a timely way. So really working with the medical community to bump up the inventory or the possibilities of having more developmental pediatricians, but ultimately what drives the medical community.
Good, good. More access. We definitely need more access. I also want to dive into the education initiative of Celebrate Dyslexia. So uh, exciting, right? You're thinking of starting a tuition-free charter school, and I want to hear more about that. Can you are you at liberty to share what this tuition-free school is going to look like?
Yes, it is not a secret. We are really trying to address education issues for dyslexic children and students, as well as dyslexic issues, problems within the whole dyslexia community. And as we were surveying the whole landscape, really the programs that are offered right now for dyslexia intervention for teachers to get their CALPs or CALPs or even become a QI, they're extremely expensive, they're very time consuming, and there are only limited spots. You can't find lots of different opportunities to get trained in these areas. So we were really looking as to how we can build capacity so that we can just really saturate our educational landscape with experts in this field. And the only way we can do that is really to go to the uh, teacher prep position and talk to the universities that would be willing to partner with us in either offering a program or offering solid instruction for those teacher prep candidates in dyslexia. Even if it's just a very solid understanding, signs and symptoms, these are the accommodations, and this is the why behind all of this. Every teacher is going to have dyslexic students. They will be in every classroom in every year. So much like the medical community, for a doctor to graduate and not at least be able to identify cancer,
Right.
we would never think
Yeah.
that that would be
Yeah. That would
possible.
be a disaster. Yes.
Well, the same thing for teachers. We don't expect every teacher to be an expert, although that would be nice
Yes.
with the incidence of dyslexia. And it might be one day, but the first step is awareness, signs and symptoms. How do we refer the student as soon as possible? And to really debunk this myth that more time is better, because we know it is not. And the earliest possible identification is so crucial if that student will be reading at grade level.
Right.
So we are looking at starting a tuition-free charter school because we are absolutely passionate about those families that don't have access to this type of education, don't have the ability for private tutors, that they get the best possible dyslexia intervention and education at a tuition-free campus.
I think
So
that's
this
awesome.
campus wouldn't just serve those families and those students, but it would help build capacity to saturate our community with dyslexia interventionalists.
How can parents get involved with Celebrate Dyslexia?
Well, there's a link on our website right now that hopefully by tomorrow there will be a Celebrate Dyslexia Schools page where they can put in their information and get on our newsletter list.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, they can go to celebratedyslexia.org, fill in their email address for me to contact them, and I'm happy to get them on that list and even talk with them, find out what their hopes are, see how they would like this model to take shape. We are definitely still wanting community feedback and community input because this will serve our community.
Yes.
So we are encouraging every stakeholder to get in touch with us and let us know how we can best serve them through a campus like this.
Awesome. Awesome. So this is a really basic question, right? There are so many learning disabilities. There's autism, there's generalized learning disorder, there's ADD, ADHD, and then there's dyslexia. You have a personal calling to dyslexia, which is where the stem and the seed of Celebrate Dyslexia came from.
Yeah.
What is that personal connection? Why did you choose dyslexia, particularly of everything else?
Well, I feel like dyslexia chose me, honestly. My husband and I were never helicopter parents. We were always just involved and supportive of our children. And our oldest son really struggled. And, the oldest child is always the guinea pig. So we
Yes.
just didn't know any better. And I was pretty old school and felt like if one worksheet wasn't going to fix his automaticity, and that's the word that I learned
Right.
through this process, we were going to do 5 more. And if one chapter book was not going to get him there, we were going to keep going until it clicked. And it just never happened. And we kept asking, what could this be? And everyone kept telling us, oh, he's so smart, he's so kind, he's so compassionate. He'll get there. Boys are a little bit slower than girls. And we know that's not true. And we know that time does not fix this unless the explicit intervention is offered. And so I was at a birthday party with one of his teachers who was telling me that she thought maybe her son might have this as well, might have something called dyslexia. And I asked what that was. And she said it's when people read like my oldest. And so that night I Googled dyslexia, and there was a page that had 100 signs and symptoms at developmental milestones of dyslexia. And if your child had 10 or more, you should get them tested. Mine had 99 and a half, at least, of the 100 that were on that sheet. And so my husband and I knew that this was what it was. Of course, we requested testing. That took a while, but when we finally got the results 4 months later in that school conference room, it was the best and worst news we could have received. The best being that we finally knew, and we finally knew what it was, and we finally had a pathway forward. The worst, that he didn't have to suffer for as long as he suffered.
Right.
There was something we could have done about it sooner. So I am a mother of 3 boys, and they all have dyslexia. And I learned in the process that I have dyslexia as well. But this is definitely an outpouring of what I knew how to do in terms of creating community through my professional background in communications and PR, based on my children's journey, not my own. And really wanting not just to support them, but to support their community, because this will be their community. This is their future. And in order for me to do what I feel is best as a mom, it would be to pour as much as I can into their future community and make it a better place for everybody.
Right, right. What a great mission. What a great mission. I noticed when I went on the Celebrate Dyslexia website, there was something called the Big Give 2021. I am really intrigued. What is that, and how can parents get involved?
So the Big Give is actually a day of giving that different communities have. San Antonio's Big Give is actually on the 23rd of September, so in 2 days.
Yes.
And it's a day where all nonprofits come together in the community, and it is kind of like old school Easter seals. They would have an event for 24 hours and everybody would give for that 24 hours.
Right.
So it's a day of giving. It's a 24-hour period of giving in our community for all nonprofits, but we are one of them. So if people want to support the work that we are doing, they can go to the Big Give and click on Celebrate Dyslexia and definitely donate on that day.
And it doesn't, you said on that day. Does it stop on that day, or can they continue?
It stops at midnight. Of course, you can donate on our website or send it in the mail afterwards. We are always happy to receive donations. But for the actual Big Give event, it is on the 23rd, and we were so fortunate to be awarded a match minute. So at 3:15, everything that's donated will be matched up to $10,000. So we're really excited to be a part of that this year.
Awesome, awesome. That brings me to the Beautiful Minds and how that whole exhibit started, right? So tell me about this exhibit. How did you first come across the Beautiful Minds, and then what stemmed from there?
So I first came across Beautiful Minds, like most of us come across different events on social media. And it was my effort to find a space of celebration. So most parents solve problems using their strengths. And I knew the power of PR and communications and high profile events. So I knew if I could bring an exhibit like this to San Antonio, all of the ripple effects that would be a result of having that here. So before I saw it, I called the museum. They got me in contact with the curator, Scott Henderson, who created the exhibit. And I started talking to him about, how did you come up with this? How long has it been there? And how quickly can I get it to San Antonio? And so he developed the exhibit much the same way. He was a parent that used his strength and his skill set because his daughter was identified with dyslexia, and this is what he knew how to do. And he wanted her to know that she was a part of a very special group of people. The more he learned about dyslexia, the more amazed he was at the possibilities and the potential that his daughter had. So he created this exhibit. It was extremely successful. They extended it several times. And when I went to speak with him, I took my whole family because I wanted to see my kids' reaction to the space, and it was exactly what we were hoping for. It was full of hope. It was full of joy. It was full of promise. It was definitely a celebration. And what was wonderful was there was a section where local students were featured who told their own experience of what they were told, what experiences they had before identification, and then the strengths that they knew they had after intervention, because that's the next really big piece here, is once we identify it and we destigmatize it and we accept it, there are steps to take in order to be able to read at grade level. And so the intervention piece is so important. And that's why we're trying to build capacity here in that effort. So anyway, after many conversations, prayers, and meetings,
Convincing.
yeah, the Children's Museum here in San Antonio, called the Museum, said yes to hosting it. And Scott said yes to traveling it. And it was here for 6 months. And we are so excited that it will be in Houston for 9 months.
Yes.
So
yes.
We're just really looking forward. It's already happened. So much community has already been built as a result of the idea of this exhibit even coming. And so what we're really hoping, Houston individuals are featured with their own stories. And what we're really hoping is that all the work that different dyslexia coordinators are doing in their respective districts can be enhanced and supported with this type of conversation in the community. And that more people will get identified because it will become destigmatized. More people will understand what this is. And the community will be able to take next steps together moving forward for the dyslexic individuals.
Yeah, yeah. And from what I understand, the exhibit's going to be available in several states. Am I correct about that?
It is definitely available for traveling. When we announced that it was available for traveling before COVID, we received inquiries from almost every state to have it come. COVID, of course, changed that, but we know the communities where this exhibit is going. It is meant to be there at that time. So we're really excited to see where it's going to go next, and also have the stories to tell that come out of Houston as to all the work that has happened in Houston with this exhibit there.
Right. So, a lot of the listeners haven't actually seen the exhibit. So, two questions for you. What can they expect to find when they go see the exhibit? And then how can they get access? Is it just going to the museum and buying a ticket? How can they get in?
So definitely, yes, they can go to the museum, get a ticket. There are free family Thursdays that are available. So they need to check the website, maybe call the museum to see exactly when that happens. I know a lot of school districts are already planning special nights for their dyslexic families. So maybe if you don't know of that happening in your school district, give your dyslexia coordinator a call and ask when that's happening, because I know there's been a lot of planning. And so we wouldn't want anyone to miss out on that. The exhibit will be in Houston through May of 22. So we hope that people don't just go once, but go several times and take as many people as they can and really make the most of its time there in Houston.
Right, right.
And
So
I don't think I've mentioned it's at the Health Museum.
it is at the
So
Health Museum, yes, and I can put a link to that as well in the show notes. Um, can you share a few of the pieces that they can expect to find at the exhibit and how it celebrates students with dyslexia?
absolutely. So, like I mentioned, it gives voices to different members of the Houston community. So, individuals will get to hear from different Houston dyslexic individuals their own stories. So, they will see their strength depicted in their picture, things that they know they're confident and good at, and they will also hear their voices overhead tell their stories. There's also a Hall of Fame, which is interesting to me because I'll ask people who have been featured in the exhibit what their favorite part of the exhibit is, and it's usually that they didn't realize that all of those innovators and famous people that we celebrate all their wins and accomplishments shared the dyslexic mind. There's a lot of information and local resources that will be featured as well. I know Houston is so fortunate to have NIHouse. So there is information that NIHouse has left at the exhibit for people to get more information on their way out. There are also different brain games and activities for the whole family to participate in. So there's a lot to experience, and you can spend as much or as little time as you can handle or think is appropriate. But we hope that everyone who comes leaves with joy and leaves knowing that they're a part of an incredible community.
I know that there's this exhibit's going to be traveling and it's going to be here for several months. When is there a plan for an iteration two for it to come back to Houston? And the reason I'm asking that question is that if there are people who haven't had a chance to get involved or celebrate their work, um, can they offer that in the second go around?
Probably.
Okay.
So stay tuned for more about that. But we also have a play that we're working on with our local children's theater that will be traveling as well.
Awesome.
So I believe there will be some readings done on that play before it premieres here in San Antonio in the Houston area at the Health Museum. So we'll have more information about that in coming months.
It has been a true pleasure, Jasmin. I am going to share all of this information. I would love for my listeners to go and look at the exhibit, get inspired, and offer to showcase their work if possible.
That would be
Um, Jasmin, you're doing so much. I think like you said, you've already built a community, and I think that is really really important for anybody who is for raising a normal child. It's important to build a village. It's even more important to have a village when you have a child with dyslexia or a student with dyslexia. And I think you have just offered so many resources through this exhibit to all of these families. We all do our part, but thank you so much for doing this, for bringing Celebrate Dyslexia to us, and for bringing the beautiful minds to us, because I know it took a lot of convincing.
Well, we just have such an incredible collaborative network, and we are so grateful for everybody's role. And we are always happy to make new friends and make new connections and collaborations. And we just really hope more than anything else that we are serving our community.
Yes, yes. I think you're going to have resonating support. Whatever I can do to celebrate and offer support, I'd be more than happy to. But thank you again for taking the time to speak with me about Celebrate Dyslexia and the beautiful minds. Appreciate your time this evening.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Education Redefined. We welcome feedback. Join our Facebook group to leave a comment or a question. We look forward to hearing from you. Until then, stay tuned for our next episode.